Okay, welcome book lovers, and thank you for joining us tonight. So think about this. 25 years ago, there was no single editorial resource for readers to find out more about books or authors they loved other than a book cover flap, which often disclosed how many pets or children the authors had and maybe mentioned where they went to school. There was no Google, no Wikipedia. So where could readers go if they wanted more? Answering that question is what led our guest, Carol Fitzgerald, to launch the Book Report Network in 1996. 25 years later, the Book Report Network has grown into a group of internet sites that has become a robust gathering place for book lovers. And tonight, we welcome Carol back to our summer reading program to highlight the books we'll be talking about this fall. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you so much. And it's so nice to be here virtually. And once again, I feel like I'm in the library. So I'm going to walk you through. Fall has got so many big books this year from so many big authors. So I'm looking forward to sharing these with you. Let us start out. Okay, I need to be able to go forward. Okay, we're going to do fiction. And we're going to start with fiction. And just let me move this to the bottom 1 second. Okay, we're opening with Sally Rooney, whose book, Beautiful World, Where Are You? This is a very anticipated book. It's coming out from Forrest, Strauss and Giroux. It's a new publisher for her this time. It's coming on September 7th. So Alice, a novelist, meets Felix, who works in a warehouse, and asks him if he'd like to travel to Rome with her. In Dublin, her best friend Eileen is getting over a breakup and slips back into flirting with Simon, a man she's known since childhood. Alice, Felix, Eileen and Simon are still young, but life is catching up with them. They desire each other, they delude each other, they get together, they break apart, they have sex, they worry about their friendships and the world they live in. Are they standing in the last lighted room before the darkness, bearing witness to something? And will they find their way into a beautiful world? Everybody remembers what it was like to be a 20-something, and this book kind of sums up from the author of Normal People just what it's like. Next, we've got The Great Glorious Goddamn of It All by Josh Ritter. Josh Ritter, some of you may know, is a musician as well. This book's also coming on September 7th. And here's what we've got as the plot. In the tiny timber town of Cordelia, Idaho, 99-year-old Weldon Applegate recounts his life in all its glory, filled with tall tales, writ large with murder, mayhem, avalanches, and bootlegging. It's a story of dark pine forest brewing with ancient magic, and Weldon's struggle as a boy to keep his father's inherited timber claim, the Lost Lot, from the ravenous clutches of Lyndon Lawhen. So ever since young Weldon stepped foot in the deep Cordelia woods as a child, he dreamed of joining the rowdy ranks of his ancestors in their epic axe-swinging adventures. Local legend says their family boasts some of the greatest lumberjacks to ever roam the American West. But at the beginning of the 20th century, the jacks are dying out, and it's up to Weldon to defend his family legacy. So here we've got this cover with a tree being chopped up away. Next, we've got In Every Mirror She's Black, and it's by Loa Kimode Akrstam. And this is coming on September 7th from Source Books. We did an early feature about this book, and it's one that's going to look at a subject from a number of different ways. We've got 3 Black women who are linked in unexpected ways to the same influential white man in Stockholm as they build their new lives in the most open society run by the most private people. Successful marketing executive Kemi is lured from the United States to Sweden by Johnny Van Lunden, CEO of the nation's largest marketing firm, to help fix a PR fiasco involving a racially tone-deaf campaign. A killer at work, but a failure at love, Kemi's move is a last-ditch effort to reclaim her social life. But a chance meeting with Johnny in business class en route to the US propels formal model turned flight attendant Brittany Ray Johnson in a life of wealth, luxury, and privilege, a life she's not sure she wants, as the object of his unhealthy obsession. And the third woman, a refugee, Muna, who has lost her entire family, finds a job cleaning the toilets at Johnny's office as she works to establish her residency in Sweden, and more importantly, seeks a connection and a place that she can call home. So in every mirror, these women are going to look black. And at the same time as to this man, how are they all going to look? Three different people. What's going to happen to them? I have this on my shelf to read, simply because I'm just so intrigued by the whole concept. Next, from Scribner, from Cole Tombin, we've got The Magician, also coming on September 7th. Now, let me just give you this little trick. Many of the big books each month come out on the first Tuesday of the month. It's something that just happens in publishing. Today was the first Tuesday, and a lot of books broke today as well. So September 7th is the day to remember, because it's going to be the first Tuesday of September. A lot is happening. So here we've got Cole exploring the heart and mind of a writer whose gift is unparalleled and whose life is driven by a need to belong and the anguish of illicit desire. Novel opens in a provincial German city at the turn of the 20th century, where the boy, Thomas Mann, grows up with a conservative father, bound by propriety, and a Brazilian mother, alluring and unpredictable. Young man hides his artistic aspirations from his father and his homosexual desires from everyone. He is infatuated with one of the richest, most cultured Jewish families in Munich and marries their daughter Katya, and they have 6 children. On holiday in Italy, he longs for a boy he sees on the beach and writes the story A Death in Venice. He is the most successful novelist of his time, winner of the Nobel Prize of Literature, a public man whose private life remains secret, and he's expected to lead the condemnation of Hitler, whom he underestimates. His oldest daughter and son, leaders of Bohemianism in the anti-Nazi movement, share lovers. He flees Germany for Switzerland, France, and ultimately America. This is one of those stories that it's going to be rich. There's going to be a lot of characters happening, a lot of intrigue among the characters. I think it's going to be one that is going to be getting a lot of attention this year. You'll know him as the author of The Master and also of Brooklyn. Next, we've got Lauren Groff, also coming September 7th. Like I said, a big day. And her book is, I'm just trying to move everybody. Hold on just 1 second. I have to collapse this down here. Oh, they're still there. Okay. It's coming from Riverhead on September 7th. And Lauren Groff, you probably remember as the author of Fates and Furies. So here, cast out of a royal court by Eleanor of Aquitaine, deemed too coarse and rough-hewn for marriage or courtly life, 17-year-old Marie de France is sent to England to be the new prioress of an impoverished abbey, its nuns on the brink of starvation and beset by disease. First is taken aback by the severity of her new life, Marie finds focus and love in the collective life with her singular and mercurial sisters. She steadily supplants her desire for family, for her homeland, for passions of her youth with something new to her, devotion to her sisters, and a conviction in her own divine visions. Marie is born the last of a long line of women warriors and crusaders, determined to chart a bold new course for the women she now leads and protects. But in a world that is shifting and corroding in very frightening ways, one can never reconcile with her existence. Will the sheer force of Marie's vision be enough? Heard Lauren talk about this book. She is just so wedded to the subject. And I know it's going to be one of those books that has really deep and intense writing as well. Next, from Colson Whitehead, we have Harlem Shuffle. This is coming on September 14th. What we've got here is to his customers and neighbors on 125th Street, Carney is an upstanding salesman of reasonably priced furniture, making a decent life for himself and his family. Few people know he descends from a line of uptown hoods and crooks, and that his facade of normalcy has more than a few cracks in it, cracks that are getting bigger over time. Then his cousin Freddie falls in with a crew who plan to rob the Hotel Teresa, the Waldorf of Harlem, and volunteers Ray's services as the fence. Now Ray has new clientele, one made up of shady cops, vicious local gangsters, two-bit pornographers, and other assorted Harlem lowlifes. Thus begins the internal tussle between Ray the Striver and Ray the Crook. And as Ray navigates this double life, he begins to see who actually pulls the strings in Harlem. Can Ray avoid getting killed, save his cousin, and grab his share of the big score, all while maintaining his reputation as the go-to source for all your quality home furniture needs? So I think he had a lot of fun writing this book. We know him as the author of both The Underground Railroad and The Nickel Boys. It's a fabulous piece about him on 60 Minutes, where he talked about his whole writing style, how he writes, including he plays really loud music. And his wife is a literary agent, and they're sharing space right now. And she says, I had like no idea this is what he usually did all day long, because we're both home during the pandemic. And he also said he takes lots of naps. But here's a book that I think is going to be both edgy and fun. So looking forward to a new book from Colson. Next, we've got T.C. Boyle, and we've got Talk to Me. And I just love that monkey on the cover. Looks like many little children going, I didn't do it. So when animal behaviorist guy, let me see if I can do this, Schermerhorn, demonstrates on the TV game show that he has taught Sam, his juvenile chimp, to speak in sign language, Amy, an undergraduate of Dyes University, is so taken with the performance that she applies to become his assistant. A romantic and intellectual attachment soon morphs into interspecies love triangle that pushes hard at the boundaries of consciousness and the question of what we know and how we know it. What if it was possible to speak to the members of another species, to converse with them, not just give commands or coach them, but to really have an exchange of ideas and a meeting of the minds? How many people would like to talk to their dog and just figure out, or the cat, just figure out what they're really thinking? Did apes have God? Did they have souls? Did they know about death and redemption, about prayer, the economy, rockets, space? Did they miss the jungle? Did they even know what the jungle was? Did they dream, make wishes, hope for the future? I don't know. It's all about, can these pets talk to me? Next, from Robert Dugoni, we've got The World Played Chess. In 1979, Vincent Bianco has just graduated from high school. His only desire to collect a little beer money and enjoy his final summer before college. So he lands a job as a laborer on a construction crew and working alongside two Vietnam vets, one suffering from PTSD, he gets the education of a lifetime. Now, 40 years later, with his own son leaving for college, the lessons of that summer, Vincent's last taste of innocence and his first of real life, dramatically unfolds in a novel about breaking away, shaping a life, and seeking one's own destiny. Robert Dugoni is one of these authors that really writes from the heart. He is known as the author of The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell and the Tracy Crossworth thriller series. But what he always does is beautiful writing, and what you feel is you feel the characters and you walk away like you feel like you've been you spent the day with them. So it's one of the reasons I always turn and want to read his books. Next, we've got Bewilderment from Richard Powers, who you will know as the author of Overstory. It's coming on September 21st. In this, the astrobiologist Theo Byrne searches for life throughout the cosmos while single-handedly raising his unusual 9-year-old Robin following the death of his wife. Robin's a warm, kind boy who spends hours painting elaborate pictures of endangered animals. He's also about to be expelled from the 3rd grade for smashing his friend in the face. As his son grows more troubled, Theo hopes to keep him off of psychoactive drugs. He learns of an experimental neurofeedback treatment to bolster Robin's emotional control, one that involves training the boy on the recorded patterns of his mother's brain. It marks Richard Powers' most intimate and moving novel. So I think that this one is one where you're going to understand like father-son relationships, troubles, where do we go from there? And for many parents, it's been periods of bewilderment when we were raising our children. Next, from Ruth Ozeki, we've got The Book of Form and Emptiness coming on September 21st. 1 year after the death of his beloved musician father, 13-year-old Benny O becomes to hear voices. The voice belonged to a thing in his house, a sneaker, a broken Christmas ornament, a piece of wilted lettuce. Although he doesn't understand what these things are saying, he can sense their emotional tone. Some are pleasant, a gentle or a coo, but others are snide, angry, and full of pain. When his mother, Annabelle, develops a hoarding problem, the voices grow more clamorous. At first, he tries to ignore them, but soon the voices follow him outside the house, onto the street, and into school, driving him at last to seek refuge in the silence of a large public library, where the objects are well-behaved and know to speak in whispers. I love that. There, Benny discovers a strange new world. He falls in love with a mesmerizing street artist with a smug pet ferret who uses the library as her performance space. He meets a homeless philosopher poet who encourages him to ask important questions and find his own voice amongst the many. And he meets his very own book, a talking thing, who narrates Benny's life and teaches him to listen to the things that truly matter. So we've got the Book of Form and Emptiness. By the way, look at these covers as we're going through. I think one is more spectacularly interesting than the next. And like the detail in them. And what I love is everything is so different. I mean, you realize that from an art direction point of view, to make sure your covers aren't looking like somebody else and they're also telling part of the story is completely huge. Next, from Anthony Doerr, we've got the long-awaited new novel from the author of All the Light We Cannot See, coming on September 28th, and it's called Cloud Cuckoo Land. The heroes of Cloud Cuckoo Land are trying to figure out the world around them. First, we have Anna and Omir, opposite sides of the formidable city walls in the 1453 siege of Constantinople. Then we've got a teenage idealist in an attack on a public library in present-day Idaho, and Constance on an interstellar trip bound for an exoplanet decades from now. Like Marie, Laure, and Werner in All the Light We Cannot See, Anna, Omir, Seymour, and Constance are dreamers and outsiders who find resourcefulness and hope in the midst of peril. An ancient text, the story of Ethion, who longs to be turned into a bird so he can fly to a utopian paradise in the sky, provides solace and mystery to these unforgettable characters. And he's created a tapestry of times and places that reflect our vast interconnectedness with other species, with each other, with those who lived before us, and those will be here after we're gone. And the one thing is all these people have a love of reading, they have a love of words, and that is going to be the connection amongst these different time periods and these different characters. Next, from Nicholas Sparks, we've got The Wish. 1996 was the year that changed everything for Maggie Dawes. She was sent away at 16 to live with an aunt she barely knew on Ocracoke on North Carolina's Outer Banks, where she could think only of the friends and family she left behind. Until she met Bryce Trickett, one of the few teenagers on the island. Handsome, genuine, and newly admitted to West Point, Bryce showed her how much there was to love about the windswept beach town and introduced her to photography, a passion that would define the rest of her life. 2019, she's a renowned travel photographer. She splits her time between running a successful gallery in New York and photographing remote locations around the world. But this year, she's grounded at Christmas, struggling to come to terms with a sobering medical diagnosis. Increasingly dependent on a young assistant, she finds herself becoming close to him. And as they count down the last days of the season together, she begins to tell them the story of another Christmas, decades earlier, and the love that set her on a course she never could have imagined. So there we've got The Wish. By the way, I've spent time on Ocracoke. It's a beautiful island and it's pretty desolate off the Outer Banks. It's one of those ones when the hurricanes happen, you don't want to be on the island. Next, another eagerly anticipated book, Amor Towles' new book, The Lincoln Highway. You know him as the author of A Gentleman in Moscow. This is coming on October 5th. Here's the premise. It's June 1954, and 18-year-old Emmett Watson is driven home to Nebraska by the warden of a juvenile work farm where he has served 15 months for involuntary manslaughter. His mother long gone, his father recently deceased, and the family farm foreclosed upon by the bank. His intention is to pick up his 8-year-old brother Billy and head to California where they start their lives anew. But when the warden drives away, Emmett discovers that two friends from the work farm have hidden themselves in the trunk of the warden's car. Together, they've hatched an altogether different plan for Emmett's future, one that will take them all on a fateful journey in the opposite direction to the city of New York. So you know with him, this is going to be one of those very interesting stories about character. Who are these people? Why do they end up in New York? And I heard him speak about this book. And what he said is he works in these different time periods. The first book was Rules of Civility. And then we have The Gentleman in Moscow. And this book sort of is coming into ending at the same time The Gentleman in Moscow is leaving the hotel. It's one of those little quick kind of things that he's thrown into the book to tie all his stories together. And while those characters are never going to meet, the timelines kind of run up against each other, which is kind of fun, like a little insider thing to see. Next from Elizabeth Strout. And like I said, folks, it's a big year. You're seeing a lot of very big authors. We've got O. William, which is coming on October 19th. Lucy Barton, character that many of us know, is a writer, but her ex-husband, William, remains a hard man to read. William, she confesses, has always been a mystery to me. Another mystery is why the two have remained connected all these years. They just are. So Lucy is both surprised and not surprised when William asks her to join him on a trip to investigate a recently uncovered family secret. One of those secrets that rearrange everything we think about the people closest to us. What happens next is nothing less than another example of what Hilary Mantel has called Elizabeth Strout's perfect attunement to the human condition. Their fears and insecurities, simple joys and acts of tenderness, and revelations about affairs and other spouses, parents and their children. On every page of this novel, we learn more about the quiet forces that hold us together, even when we're growing apart. So I think this is another stunning cover, and we've got O. William. Next, from Beatrice Williams, we've got The Wicked Widow, a Wicked City novel. It's another one in her series. So it's coming on October 26th. It's June 1925. Audacious Appalachian a flapper, Geneva Gin Kelly, prepares to trade her high-flying ways for respectable marriage to Oliver Anson Marshall, a steady prohibition agent. But just as the wedding bells chime, the head of a notorious East Coast rum-running racket and Anson's mortal enemy turns up murdered at a society funeral. And their short-lived honeymoon bliss goes up in a blaze that sends Anson back undercover and into the jaws of a trap, which even Gin can't rescue him from. So it's June 1998, and Ella's 90-something society queen, Aunt Julie, ropes her into digging up dirt on the senator and presidential candidate Franklin Hardcastle in order to settle old family scores. These secrets lead to a web of shady dealings Ella has uncovered in her job as a financial analyst, and the bodies start to tumble out of the venerable woodwork. With the help of her ex-husband and her mysterious connection to a certain red-headed flapper, Ella digs up more than mere dirt, only to discover herself standing alone between the legendary ruthless family and the prize it sought for generations. So there we've got The Wicked Widow. Gary Scheinhardt is got this book called Country Friends, and it's a book that you knew that somebody was going to tackle. Well, here he's going to write. It's March 2020. This book's going to be out on November 22nd, but we all know when we say March 2020 what it means. And a calamity is unfolding. A group of friends and friends of friends gathers in a country house to wait out the pandemic. Over the next 6 months, new friendships and romances will take hold, while old betrayals will emerge, forcing each character to reevaluate whom they love and what matters most. This unlikely cast of characters includes a Russian-born novelist, his Russian-born psychiatrist wife, their precocious child obsessed with K-pop, a struggling Indian-American writer, a wildly successful Korean American app developer, a global dandy with 3 passports, a young flamethrower of an essayist, originally from the Carolinas, and a movie star, the actor whose rival upsets the equilibrium of this chosen family. So we all know how people hunkered down with each other. There were so many stories about people that were all out in the Hamptons, that were all out in these vacation locations together. And our country friends, we've all come together. And then all of a sudden, nobody's leaving because the pandemic is going on. And there were stories about people saying, I really want these house guests to leave, and they can't. So now here we've got all these people gathering in this country house. You know, it's going to be complete pandemonium. Next, from Elise Erdrich, we have The Sentence. This is her latest novel, asks what we owe to the living, to the dead, to the reader, and to the book. A small independent bookstore in Minneapolis is haunted from November 9, 2019 to November 2020 by the store's most annoying customer. Flora dies on Old Souls Day, but she won't leave the store. Tuki, who has landed a job selling books after years of incarceration that she survived by reading with murderous attention, must solve the mystery of this haunting, while at the same time trying to understand all that occurs in Minneapolis during a year of grief, astonishment, isolation, and furious reckoning. So once again, we're dripping into pandemic days. Next, from Diana Gabaldon, coming on November 23rd, we've got Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone. And we know her as the best-selling author of the Outlander series. It's 1779, and Claire and Jamie are the last reunited with their daughter Brianna, her husband Roger, and their children on Fraser's Ridge. Having the family together is a dream the Frasers had thought was impossible. Yet even in the North Carolina backcountry, the effects of war are being felt. Tensions in the colonies are great, and locals' feelings are running hot enough to boil hell's tea kettle. Jamie knows loyalties among his tenants are split, and they won't be long until war is on his doorstep. And not so far away, young William Ransom is still coming to terms with the discovery of his father's true identity, and thus his own. And Lord John Grey has reconciliations to make, dangers to meet on his son's behalf and his own. Meanwhile, the Revolutionary War creeps closer to Fraser's Ridge, and with the family finally together, Jamie and Claire have more at stake than ever before. I'm going to tell you a little secret about Diana Gabaldon. People tell me that I talk fast. Oh my gosh, I've heard her do panels, and she makes me sound like I am in slow mo. So that's a little like background on her. And she is just one of these huge, voracious writers, as well as being a reader. She is a huge writer. When she sits down, it's not going to be something short. It's going to be this big, elaborate, very pulled together kind of story, as we all saw with Outlander. Next, from Meg Way Clayton, we've got The Postmistress of Paris, coming on November 30th. Wealthy, beautiful Nani was born with a spirit of adventure that transcends her Midwestern roots. For her, learning to fly is freedom. When the German tanks roll across the border and into Paris, this woman with an adorable dog and a generous heart joins the resistance. Known as the postmistress because she delivers information to those in hiding, she uses her charm and skill to house the hunted and deliver them to safety. It's inspired by the real-life Chicago heiress, Mary Jane Gold, who worked with American generalist Varian Frey to smuggle artists and intellectuals out of France. So for those of you who are still looking for a great World War II story, here we've got it for you. Next, from Jodi Picoult, we've got Wish You Were Here, coming on November 30th. Diana Toole is perfectly on track. She's going to marry by 30, have kids by 35, and move out of New York City to the New York City suburbs, all by climbing the professional ladder in the cutthroat art auction world. She's not engaged yet, but she knows her boyfriend Finn, a surgical resident, is about to propose on the romantic getaway to the Galapagos days before her 30th birthday. And then a virus that felt worlds away appears in the city, and on the eve of their departure, he breaks the news. He has to stay behind. But you should still go, he assures her, and so reluctantly she does. And almost immediately, her vacation goes awry. Her luggage is lost, Wi-Fi is nearly non-existent, and the hotel they booked is shut down due to the pandemic. In fact, the whole island is now under quarantine, and she's stranded until the borders reopen. Isolated, she must venture beyond her comfort zone, and slowly she carves a connection with the local family when a teenager with a secret opens up to Diana, despite her father's suspicion of outsiders. So now this is our third book that's touching upon a pandemic. So looking forward to reading this, and I've wanted to go to the Galapagos. I think getting stuck in the Galapagos would not be the worst thing that could happen to me, to be perfectly honest. I think that all we should do is we should all pick where we would have liked to be stuck over the last couple of years. Is it where we were? Is it someplace exotic and fabulous? I don't know. I think we need to ponder this. Next, we've got a couple of holiday themed books. The first is coming from Mary Kay Andrews. We know her usually as writing these big summer blockbusters. Well, she's got a holiday book called The Santa Suit, which she wrote during the pandemic because she had some extra time in her hands just sitting in her house. And it's coming on September 28th. When newly divorced Ivy Perkins buys an old farmhouse sight unseen, she is definitely looking for a change in her life. The Four Roses, as the farmhouse is called, is a labor of love. But Ivy didn't bargain on just how much labor. The previous family left so much furniture and so much junk that it's a full-time job sorting through all of it. At the top of a closet, she finds an old Santa suit, beautifully made and decades old. In the pocket of the suit, she finds a note written in childish hand. It's from a little girl who has one Christmas wish, and that's for her father to return from the war. And this discovery sends Ivy off on a mission. Who wrote the note? Did the man ever come home? And what mysteries did the Rose family hold? So there we've got the Santa suit. Background on Mary Kay Andrews. She loves to go junking. She loves to go to redo her house. If you follow her on social media, she is constantly out at garage sales, any place where she can pick up everything from her favorite blue and white chinaware to just about anything that she's going to be doing a beach house over or whatever. So you also know that this is going to have some what I call house porn in it as well, because there's got to be something about this farmhouse that she's going to be creating just as a place that will be important as well. Next from Debbie Maycomer, we've got Dear Santa. It's Liddy Carmichael isn't feeling particularly joyful when she returns home to Washington for Christmas. The man she thought was the one has cheated on her with her best friend. She feels completely devoid of creativity in her graphic design job. Not even carolers or Christmas cookies could cheer her up, but Lindy's mother, Ellen, remembers an old tradition that might lift her daughter's spirits. Reading through books of childhood letters to Santa and reminiscing about what she'd wished for as a young girl may be what she needs. And with Ellen's encouragement, she decides to write a new letter to Santa, one that will encourage her to have faith and believe, just as she'd done all those years ago. And little does she know that this exercise in gratitude will cause her wishes to unfold before her in miraculous ways. I wish I could find all the little letters I wrote to Santa. I know my mother's kept like my baby teeth. I wonder if she kept my letters to Santa. Must have been, there were true pros there. Next, we've got The Secret of Snow from Viola Shipman. Viola Shipman is the pen name of an author named Wade Rouse, who writes these books really in homage to his grandmother, who taught him so many fabulous lessons through the years. It's his first holiday book, coming October 26th. When Sunny Dunes, a SoCal meteorologist whose job is all sunshine and 72 degrees days, is replaced by a virtual meteorologist who will never age, gain weight, or negotiate his contract. The only station willing to give the 50-year-old another shot is the very place she's been avoiding since the day she left college, her northern Michigan hometown. She grudgingly goes to the long, cold, snowy winters of her childhood with the added humiliation of moving back in with her mother. Sunny finds her past blindsiding her everywhere, from her high school friend she ghosted to the former journalism classmate and mortal frenemy who's now her boss, to most keenly, the death years ago of her younger sister who loved the snow. Distract her from the memories she spent her life trying to outrun, she throws herself headfirst into covering every small town winter event to woo a new audience, made more bearable by a handsome widower with optimism to share. But with someone trying to undermine her efforts to rebuild her career, she has to make peace with who she used to be and allow her heart to thaw if she's ever going to find a place she really can call home. So here we've got The Sneaker of Snow, and I'm already cold thinking about it. Now it's got some thrillers and mysteries. We start with Friends Like These by Kimberly McCrate, another really stunning cover. Everyone has those friends. It doesn't matter how long it's been or how badly they've been occasionally behaved or how late it is when that call finally comes, you show up. No questions asked. Honestly, that's how the five of us ended up here in the Catskills. We did have the best of intentions, especially after what happened to Alice all those years ago. We can't bear to think about losing anyone else. In fact, we'll do anything to make sure that doesn't happen. We'll go so much further than anyone thought we would. In the end, maybe that's what caught up with us. That and the fact that we're all such a complicated group, so much history and so many big personalities. Secrets, too, that can slip out at the most inopportune moments. Of course, we love each other despite all of these things. We love each other no matter what. There's something so beautiful about that kind of unconditional love. It can turn ugly, though. Maybe that's just us. After all, we've been through so much together and we have so very much to hide. There we've got Friends Like These. Next, we've got Never Saw Me Coming by Vera Corian, coming on September 7th. It'd be easy to understand Chloe Severe. She's a freshman honors student, legging wearing hot girl next door, who also happens to be a psychopath. She spends her name on yoga lattes, frock parties, and plotting to kill Will Bachman, a childhood friend who grievously wronged her. She's one of 7 students at her DC-based college who are part of an unusual clinical study of psychopaths. Students like herself who lack empathy and can't comprehend emotions like fear or guilt. The study, led by a renowned psychologist, requires them to wear smartwatches that track their moods and movements. When one of the students in the study is found murdered in the psychology building, a dangerous game of cat and mouse begins, and Chloe goes from hunter to prey. As she races to identify the killer and put her own plans for revenge into action, she'll be forced to decide if she can trust any of her fellow psychopaths, and everyone knows you should never trust a psychopath. So here we've got Never Saw Me Coming. Then from Lisa Jewell, we've got The Night She Disappeared. On a beautiful summer night in a charming English suburb, a young woman and her boyfriend disappear after partying at the massive country estate of a new college friend. 1 year later, a writer moves into a cottage on the edge of the woods that borders the same estate. Locally known as the Dark Place, the dense forest is a writer's favorite area for long walks, and it's here that one walk she stumbles upon a mysterious note that simply reads, "Dig here." Could this be a clue towards what happened to the missing couple and what is exactly buried on this haunted ground? There we've got The Night She Disappeared. I interviewed Lisa last year. I've really got to get in touch with her about this book. She always has one thing that she sees that starts her book. Last year she had seen this man walking on the street where all these mothers were waiting to pick up children from school. And that was the start of idea. And I've got to figure out what was the idea that on The Night She Disappeared. Next, we've got Rock, Paper, Scissors from Alice Feeney. I absolutely love Alice's work. Last book was a treat. I've got this one on my shelf. I can't wait to read it. You may know her as the author of Sometimes I Lie. She lives in Australia. I had the pleasure of interviewing her last year, and let's go into what this one's about. Things have been wrong with Mr. and Mrs. Wright for a long time. When Adam and Amelia win a weekend away to Scotland, it might be just what their marriage needs. Self-confessed workaholic and screenwriter Adam Wright has lived his life with face blindness his whole life. He can't recognize friends or family or even his whole life and his own wife. Every anniversary, the couple exchanges traditional gifts: paper, cotton, pottery, tin. And each year, Adam's wife writes him a letter that she never lets him read until now. They both know that this weekend will make or break their marriage, but they didn't randomly win this trip. One of them is lying, and sometimes someone doesn't want them to live happily ever after. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of secrets, and an anniversary they will never forget. And in Alice's hands, I know this is going to be like just quite a story. Next, from Leanne Moriarty, I think we might know her as writing like a couple of books that we will know, really thing, like that book, Big Little Lies. Well, here we've got Apples Never Fall. The Laneys are fixtures in their community. The parents, Stan and Joy, are the envy of all their friends. They're killers on the tennis court, and often their chemistry is palpable. But after 50 years of marriage, they finally sold their famed tennis academy, and they're ready to start what should be the golden years of their lives. So why are they so miserable? The four Delaney children were tennis stars in their own right, yet none of them had what it took to go all the way. One night, a stranger named Savannah knocks on Stan and Joy's door, bleeding after a fight with her boyfriend. They're more than happy to give her the small kindness she sorely needs. If only that was all she wanted. Later, when Joy goes missing and Savannah is nowhere to be found, the police question the one person who remains, Stan. But for someone who claims to be innocent, he, like many spouses, seems to have a lot to hide. Two of the Delaney children think their father is innocent. Two are not sure. But as two sides square off against each other, all the Delaneys will start to re-examine their shared family history in a very new light. So there we got from Leanne Moriarty, Apples Never Fall. From Don Winslow, this is actually, I heard him speak about this. This is the beginning of a trilogy that he is writing. It's set up in Providence, Rhode Island. He grew up on Rhode Island, and this is a story that he just feels like he was born to write. That we're in Providence, it's 1986. 29-year-old Danny Ryan is hardworking longshoreman, loving husband, loyal friend, and occasional muscle for the Irish crime syndicate that oversees much of the city. He yearns for something more and dreams of starting over fresh, someplace far away. But when a modern-day Helen of Troy triggers a war between rival mob factions, Danny is embroiled in a conflict he can't escape. Now it's up to him to step into the breach to protect his family, the friends who are closer to him than brothers, and the only home he's ever known. Don went home to write this book, and during the course or just before his mother passed away. So this is a lot about his feeling of that part of the country, and as well as his crime writing and storytelling here. It's also got a stunning cover. Okay, we've got from Wiley Cash, we've got When the Ghosts Come Home, coming on September 21st. The roar of a low-flying airplane awakens him in the middle of the night. Sheriff Winston Barnes knows something strange is happening at the nearby airfield on the coast of North Carolina. But nothing can prepare him for what he finds. A large airplane has crash landed and is now sitting sideways on the runway, and there are no signs of a pilot or cargo. When the body of a local man is discovered shot dead and lying on the grass near the crash site, he begins a murder investigation that will change the course of his life and the fate of the community he's sworn to protect. Everyone is a suspect, including the dead man. As rumors and accusations fly, long simmering racial tensions explode overnight. And Winston, whose own tragic past has followed him like a ghost, must do his duty while facing the painful repercussions of old decisions. Winston also knows that his days of a sheriff may be numbered. He's up for re-election against a corrupt and well-connected challenger, and his deputies are choosing sides. As if these events weren't troubling enough, he must finally confront his daughter, Colleen, who came home grieving a shattering loss that she cannot fully articulate. So this is lots of stories, lots of people with coming home. What is this actually going to mean? It's by the author of A Land More Kind Than Home. So this is new from Wiley Cash. Next, from Lisa Unger, we've got Last Girl Ghosted. This is an author I have been keeping an eye on for years. I've read so many of her books. If you haven't read her last book, Confessions on the 745, I highly urge you to read it. And I am looking forward to reading this new book. She writes standalone books that, once again, really superb thriller writing. This is on sale on October 5th. She met him through a dating app, an intriguing picture on a screen, a date at a downtown bar. What she thought might be happen was a quick hookup quickly became much more. She fell for him hard. Happens sometimes. A powerful connection with a perfect stranger takes you by surprise. Could it be love? But then, just as things are getting real, he stood her up. He disappeared. Profiles deleted, phone disconnected. She was ghosted. Maybe it was her fault. Maybe she shared too much, too fast. But isn't that what always women think, that they're the ones that are to blame? So soon she learns there were others. Girls who thought they were in love, girls who later went missing. She's been looking for a connection, and now she's looking for answers. Chasing a digital trail into his dark past and hers, she finds herself on a dangerous hunt, and she's not sure whether she's the predator or the prey. So there we've got Last Girl Ghosted. From John Grisham, we've got The Judges List. Little interesting fact, when we were talking about the history of Book Reporter and the Book Report Network being 25 years old, our very first author interview, it was a typed author interview, there's no such thing as broadband at that point, was with John Grisham. And also we had the very first time that a John Grisham excerpt ever appeared online was on our website. And that was, I think, in February of 1997. That's how far back things go. So here we've got his new book coming on October 19th. Approaching 40, Lacey Stoles is tired of her work for the Florida Board on Judicial Conduct and is ready for a change. And then she meets a mysterious woman who is so frightened she uses a number of aliases. Jerry Crosby's father was murdered 20 years earlier in a case that remains unsolved and has grown stone cold. But Jerry has a suspect with whom she has become obsessed and has stalked for 2 decades. And along the way, she's discovered other victims. Suspicions are easy enough, but proof seems impossible. The man is brilliant, patient, and always one step ahead of law enforcement. He's the most cunning of all serial killers. He knows forensics, police procedure, and most important, he knows the law. He's a judge in Florida under Lacey's jurisdiction. He has a list with the names of his victims and targets, all unsuspecting people, unlucky enough to have crossed his path and wronged him in some way. How can Lacey pursue him without becoming the next name victim on his list? So we've got The Judges List. Then Tamron Hall, and you know her because she is the award-winning journalist. She's got a new thriller, and it's called As the Wicked Watch. When crime reporter Jordan Manning leaves her hometown in Texas to take a job at a television station in Chicago, she's one step closer to her dream, a coveted anchor chair on a national network. She's smart and aggressive, with unabashed star power, and often the only woman of color in the newsroom. Armed with a master's degree in forensic science and impeccable instincts, she's been able to balance her dueling motivations, breaking every big story and giving voice to the voiceless. Again and again, she's called to cover the murders of Black women, many of them sexually assaulted, most brutalized, and all of them quickly forgotten. All until Maisie James, the story that Jordan just can't shake despite all efforts. It's 15-year-old girl whose body was found in an abandoned lot. Macy has come to represent for Jordan all the frustration and anger that her job often forces her to repress. Putting to rest her work and her fraying personal life, she does everything she can to give story the coverage it deserves and that Black children rarely receive. She's convinced that there's a serial killer on the loose and he's hiding in plain sight. So that's The Wicked Watch by Tamron Hall. Next, we've got Better Off Dead, which is a Jack Reacher novel. Many of you know that Lee Child has given up writing the franchise, and his brother, Andrew, they were all first known as Lee Grant and Andrew Grant. Andrew's now changed his name to Andrew Child to pick up the franchise. Here, Reacher goes wherever he wants, whenever he wants. One morning, he's heading west, walking under the merciless desert sun until he comes on a curious scene. A Jeep has crashed into the only tree for miles around. A woman is slumped over the wheel. The woman is Michaela Fenton, an Army veteran turned FBI agent, trying to find her twin brother, who might be mixed up with some dangerous people. Most of them would rather die than betray their terrifying leader, who has burrowed his influence deep into a nearby border town, a backwater that has seen better days. The mysterious Den Docker rules from the shadows, out of sight and under radar, keeping his dealings in the dark. Reacher's good at finding people who don't want to be found. He offers to help, despite a feeling that Fenton's keeping secrets of her own. But a life hangs in the balance, maybe more than one, and to bring this guy down will be the riskiest job of his life. Failure is not an option because in this kind of game, the loser is always better off dead. Now notice this cover. We've got Jack Reacher, we've got Lee Child's name in big letters, we've got Andrew's name in big letters, and Better Off Dead, which is the title. The title is not Lee Child. The title is Better Off Dead, so make a note of that. Next, from Ken Follett, we've got Never, and we know him as the best-selling author of The Evening and the Morning. This is coming on November 9th. Every catastrophe begins with a little problem that doesn't get fixed, says Pauline Green, President of the United States, in Ken Follett's nerve-wracking drama of international tension. A shrinking oasis in the Sahara Desert, a stolen army drone, an uninhabited Japanese island, and one country's secret stash of deadly chemical poisons. All these play roles in a relentlessly escalating crisis. Struggling to prevent the outbreak of world war are a young woman intelligence officer, a spy working undercover with jihadists, a brilliant Chinese spy master, and Pauline herself, beleaguered by a populist rival for the next presidential election. So there we've got Never from Ken Follett. Next, from David Baldacci, we've got Mercy, which is an Antley Pine thriller on sale on November 16th. For her whole life, FBI agent Atlee Pine has been searching for her twin sister, Mercy, who was abducted at the age of 6 and never seen again. Her disappearance left behind a damaged family that later shattered beyond repair when Atlee's parents inexplicably abandoned her. Now, after a perilous investigation that's nearly proved fatal, she's finally discovered not only the reason before of her parents' abandonment and Mercy's kidnapping, but also the most promising breakthrough yet, proof that Mercy survived her abduction and escaped her captors many years ago. Though she's close to her family at last, one final leg of her road to Mercy was going to be the most treacherous. Mercy has at least one dead body behind before fleeing her captors years before. She has no idea if her sister is still alive, and if so, how she has been surviving all this time. When the truth is finally revealed, she'll face the greatest danger yet, and it may cost her everything. So here we've got Mercy. I tell you, there are certain threads that we've got in this presentation of lost people. Next time, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, check off every time you see it, and then we'll see if you're paying close attention. And at the end of the presentation, I'll sit there and see if there's a winner that sees how many people were hiding, lost, or whatever. Because we do have common themes in a lot of these descriptions of these books. Next, from Jeffrey Deaver, we've got The Midnight Lock. A woman awakens in the morning to find that someone has picked her apartment's supposedly impregnable door lock and rearranged her personal items, even sitting beside her while she slept. The intrusion, the police learn, is a message to the entire city of carnage to come. Lincoln Rhyme and Amelia Sachs are brought in to investigate and soon learn that the sociopathic intruder, who calls himself the locksmith, can break through any lock a security system ever devised. With more victims on the horizon, Rhyme Sachs and their stable of associates must follow the evidence to the man's lair and discover his true mission. Their hunt is interrupted when an internal investigation of the police force uncovers what seems to be a crucial mistake in one of Rhyme's previous cases. He's fired as a consultant for the NYPD and must risk jail if he investigates the locksmith case in secret. So there we've got the Midnight Lock. Going to some memoirs, biographies, and nonfiction, and we've got a good crop of titles for this fall. First, we've got Travels with George, In Search of Washington and His Legacy, coming from Nathaniel Philbrick. When George Washington became president in 1789, the United States of America was still a loose and quarrelsome confederation and a tentative political experiment. Washington overtook a tour of the ex-colonies to talk to ordinary citizens about his new government and to imbue in them the idea of being one thing, Americans. My aside here, do you know you go to all those places and say that Washington slept here? Now we know why. Now we know what he was doing. It seems like every small town I go to, there's like Washington slept here. Now we've got it. In the fall of 2018, Nathaniel Philbrick embarked on his own journey to see for himself what America has become in the 229 years since then. The narrative moves smoothly between the 18th and 21st centuries as we see the country through both Washington and Philbrick's eyes. Written at a moment when America's founding fathers were under increasing scrutiny, Travels with George grapples bluntly and honestly with Washington's legacy as a man of the people, a reluctant president, and a plantation owner who once held people in slavery. So there in our rearview mirror, we've got Travels with George. Next, we've got Vanderbilt, The Rise and Fall of an American Dynasty, which is being written by Anderson Cooper and Catherine Howe. When Cornelius Vanderbilt decided to go into business on his own, few would have believed that within 6 decades, he would epitomize American wealth, magnate of shipping and railroad empire that made him the richest man in the country. In the wake of his death in 1877, Cornelius's heirs bitterly fought over his estate, sowing familial discord that would never fully heal. The generations of Vanderbilts who followed lived lives of unimaginable excess, steeped in tides of success and failure. And now the Commodore's great-great-great-grandson, Anderson Cooper, joins with historian Catherine Howe to explore the story of his legendary family and their remarkable influence. Cooper and Howe breathe life in the ancestors who built the family's empire, basked in the Commodore's wealth, hosted lavish galas, and became synonymous with unfettered American capitalism and high society. So there we've got Vanderbilt. Next, from David Sedaris, we've got A Carnival of Snackeries, Diaries from 2003 to 2020. Usually this man really makes me laugh. If it's navel gazing you're after, you've come to the wrong place. Ditto Treacly's self-examination. Rather, David Sedaris's observations turn outward. A fight between 2 men on a bus, a fight between 2 men on the street, pedestrians being whacked over the head, or a gathering to watch a man considering to leaping to his death. There's a dirty joke shared at a book signing, then a dirtier one told at a dinner party. Lots of jokes here, plenty of laughs. Time marches on, and Sedaris at his desk or on planes and hotel dining rooms and odd Japanese inns records it. The entries here reflect an ever-changing background, new administrations, new restrictions on speech and conduct. What can you say at the start of a book you can't say by the end? So there you've got A Carnival of Snackery. Like I said, usually he records his own audiobooks, and they're incredibly funny when you listen to him doing his own stories. Next, we've got The Taking of Jemima Boone by Matthew Pearl. A quiet summer day in 1776, weeks after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, 13-year-old Jemima Boone and her friends Betsy and Fanny Calloway disappear near the Kentucky settlement of Boonesboro, the echoes of their faraway screams lingering in the air. The Cherokee Shawnee raiding party has taken the girls as the latest salvo in the blood feud between the American Indians and the colonial settlers who have decimated native lands and resources. Hanging Maw, the raiders' leader, recognizes one of the captives as Jemima Boone, daughter of Kentucky's most influential pioneers, and realizes she could be a valuable pawn in the battle to drive colonists out of the contested Kentucky territory for good. With Daniel Boone and his posse in pursuit, Hanging Maw devises a plan that could ultimately bring greater peace to both the tribes and the colonists. But after the girls find clever ways to create a trail of clues, the raiding party is ambushed by Boone and the rescuers in a battle with reverberations that nobody could predict. So there from Matthew Pearl, we've got The Taking of Jemima Boone. Next, we've got The Boys, a memoir of Hollywood and family, and it's by Ron Howard and Clint Howard. It's on sale on October 12th. And what's it like to grow up on TV? Ron Howard has been asked this question throughout all of his adult life. In The Boys, he and his younger brother Clint examine their childhoods in detail for the first time. With his perspective of time and success, Ron as a filmmaker, producer, and Hollywood A-lister, Clint as a busy character actor, the Howard brothers delved deep into an upbringing that seemed normal to them, but was anything but. Their Midwestern parents, Rance and Jean, moved out to California to pursue their own showbiz dreams, but it was their young sons who found the steady employment as actors. It's a dual narrative that lifts the lid on the Howard brothers' closely held lives. It's the journey of a tight 4-person family unit that held fast in an unforgiving business, and of 2 brothers who survived the child actor syndrome to become fulfilled adults. And we know how many people did not survive those childhood actor kind of days. So I think this will be a really fun book. Take a look at. Next, we've got Capotes Woman by Lawrence Leamer. Lawrence Leamer has done a lot of writing about the Kennedy family, and here he's going to look at Capotes Women. He's delving into the years following the acclaimed publication of Breakfast at Tiffany's in 1958 and In Cold Blood in 1966, when Capote struggled with a crippling case of writer's block. While enjoying all the fruits of his success, including cultivating close friendships with the richest and most admired women of the era, he was stuck with an idea for which he was very sure would be his most celebrated novel, one based on the remarkable racy lives of his very, very rich friends. For years, he attempted to write what he believed would have been his magnum opus, Answered Prayers. But when he originally published a few chapters in Esquire, the thinly fictionalized lives and scandals of his closest female confidants were laid bare for all to see. And the blowback incinerated his relationships and banished him from a high society world forever. A world that was already crumbling, though none of them realized it yet. So it's a true story of love, betrayal, and a swan song for an era. Next, we've got The Chancellor, the remarkable odyssey of Angela Merkel, coming from Katie Martin. It's coming on October 26th. And The Chancellor is at once a riveting political biography and an intimate human story of a complete outsider, a research chemist and a pastor's daughter raised in Soviet-controlled East Germany, who became the unofficial leader of the West. Acclaimed biographer Katie Barton sets out to piece the mystery of how Angela Merkel achieved all of this. And she found an answer on Merkel's political genius, in her willingness to talk to her adversaries rather than over them, her skill in negotiating without ever compromising on what's most important to her, her canniness in appointing political rivals to her cabinet and exacting their policies so they have no platform to run against her, the humility to allow others to take credit for things done in tandem, the wisdom to stay out of the papers and off Twitter, that's a good one, and the vision to take advantage of crises to enact bold change. Private, the Merkel who emerges in The Chancellor is a role model for anyone interested in gaining and keeping power while holding on to one's moral convictions, for anyone looking to understand how to successfully bridge huge divisions within society. Next, from Katie Couric, we've got Going There. Beginning in early childhood, she was inspired by her journalist father to pursue the career he loved but couldn't afford to stay in. She talks candidly about adjusting to sudden fame after her astonishing rise to co-anchor of the Today Show, and guides us through the momentous events and news stories of the era to which she had a front row seat. Kirk's position as one of the leading lights of her position was shadowed by the shock and trauma of losing her husband to stage 4 colon cancer when he was just 42, leaving her a widow and a single mom to 2 young daughters who were 6 and 2. The death of her sister Emily just 3 years later brought even more trauma and an unwavering commitment to cancer awareness and research, one of her proudest accomplishments. She's unsparing here in the details of her historic move to the anchor chair at CBS Evening News, a world rife with sexism and misogyny. Her welcome was even more hostile at 60 Minutes, an unrepentant boys' club that engaged in outright hazing of even the most established women. In the wake of the Me Too movement, she steers her queer-eyed reckoning with the gender inequality and predatory behavior in the workplace and the downfall of Matt Lauer, a colleague she had trusted and respected for more than a decade. So there we've got Going There with Katie Couric. Next, we've got Renegades, Born in the USA, which is a unique compilation of writers of Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen. It's on sale on October 26th. I can see this being a gift item. Renegades is a candid, revealing, and entertaining dialogue between Obama and Bruce Springsteen that explores everything from their origin stories, career-defining moments, to our country's polarized politics and the growing distance between the American dream and American reality. It's got full color photographs, rare archival material, and it's one of those illustrated portraits of two outsiders looking to connect their unconventional searches for meaning, identity, and community in the American story itself. And a lot of the books I'm presenting here today are books that are going to be great for holiday giving. A lot of the books, especially in this last section, which is memoirs and biographies. And then we've got These Precious Days essays by Ann Patchett coming on November 23rd. Any story that starts will also end. As a writer, Ann Patchett knows the outcome of her fiction will be. Life, however, often takes turns that we do not see coming. She ponders this truth in these wise essays that afford a fresh and intimate look into her mind and heart. At the center of These Precious Days is the title Essays, a surprising and moving meditation on an unexpected friendship that explores what it means to be seen, to be found, to find someone with whom you can be your best and most complete self. When she chose an early galley of an actor and producer, Tom Hanks' short story collection to read one night before bed, she had no idea that this single choice would be life-changing. It would introduce her to a remarkable woman, Tom's brilliant assistant, Suki, with whom she would form a profound bond that held monumental consequences for them both. And I read this original essay, I forget where it was published a while back. And it's just amazing how Tom Hanks had actually narrated one of her books, connects with his assistant over, making those dates. The assistant needs some treatment and needs to come to Nashville for it. She lives with Anne, and how this all comes together into be what we now know as essays called These Precious Days. It was really interesting to hear her be talking about the story. And that's it. And here's to some great fall reading. So I think that, let me see if I can get off my screen. Let me see if I can end my slideshow. See how I can do this. Close this out. And if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Thank you so much for that great presentation. I know you told me about a book I'm really looking forward to, the Robert Dugoni book, The World Played Chess. I had no idea he was coming out with another one because I loved the Sam Hell book. So that's the #1 book I'm looking forward to.
I know he's a beautiful writer. He's absolutely a beautiful writer. He's a fabulous person, and he's a really beautiful writer as well. And I'm glad to hear that you're looking forward to it, because I am too. It's on my shelf in the other room, and I'm like, this is one I can't wait to get to. No, there are a lot. I mean, we just put this presentation together this week. I mean, because these are books that are, coming in the next couple of months, and you see how it's going to be a very big fall. And you're finding books to read yourself. You're finding books you want to share with other people, a book group selections. And also, I think there's a lot to give and get for the holidays. I really do.
Absolutely.
So,
can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful. But I've been hearing from everyone I know in the world. I know it's not coming in the fall. I know it's already out. Can you tell us something about Newman's book, The Falling?
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, I love that book. I absolutely love that book.
That's all, no matter where I go, that's the only book anybody talks about.
Well, and it's also kind of interesting because we, besides doing Book Reporter and reading group guides, we have a video and podcast series where I interview authors, and I interviewed T.J. Newman, who wrote Falling. And I was just telling Julie before the presentation started that the interview with her has got almost 800 people have watched it in just the last couple of weeks. So what we've got in Falling is she's a former flight attendant. Right. And one day she was on a plane and she was standing in the back. She loved to work the red-eye flights. She loved to work the red eyes where everybody would be asleep and she'd be in the back. And she was doing that thing where you have to cover the cockpit since 9/11. Like if the pilot needs to leave to go to the bathroom or, leave the cockpit at all, she blocks the door. And when he was coming back to the bathroom, she looked at him and she says, what would happen right now if they told you that you had to crash this plane or your family would be killed? And he just gave her a look like this. And she said, then she knew she had the start of a story. She had the start of a book. And what Falling is about is that exact premise. A pilot is told that unless he crashes the plane, his family will be killed, and how that story goes from there. And it's very, very quickly paced. You have a lot of more respect for flight attendants after reading this book, because you see how they band together and what ends up happening both on the ground and up in the air. And it's very, very quick paced. So Irene, I'm not surprised you've heard about it a lot.